I think this represents probably the third best mode of transportation. The first is basically our own two legs. We should do more walking, and the next best mode of transportation is a bicycle. And electric vehicles, I think, are a wave of the future. The neat thing about electric vehicles is you can plug them in at night when you're sleeping, when we're not on peak demand. We don't need to be charging them at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody's firing up their air conditioners. And, you know, being on Platte River Power, we are working towards getting more and more renewable energy into our portfolio. We recently bought 60 megawatts of wind that we're integrating into our portfolio this fall. We're going out for bids on solar panels at Platte River Power, and we want to integrate more and more renewables. So hopefully that's what's going to be driving these things in the future, because someday coal is going to get much more expensive than wind, and you know, this is just the wave of our transportation future. Another huge advantage that the city of Longmont has is the fact that we have 6 cents a kilowatt hour electricity versus down the road in Boulder where they're paying 12 cents. So it's a lot cheaper to charge your cars here if you live in Longmont. So I'm just real excited about, you know, being on the front end of this technology and moving forward. I think I consider myself totally certified to drive one of these things because I test drove a Tesla, and Bobby King can verify that. So that was quite the experience. So anyway, thanks a lot for coming out, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve McKenna, and he's from the Regional Air Quality. So, Steve.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to be here today representing the Regional Air Quality Council and the Colorado Energy Office. We always love coming up to Longmont, love working with your team. Happy to be here to work with City of Longmont, Longmont Power and Communications. Over the years, we've helped the city work on many different sustainability efforts, including telematics and other advanced vehicle technologies. We're very happy to be here today to commend Longmont Power and Communications and the City of Longmont on their 2 new Leafs. We're fired up to see these in the fleet. We're also very happy to see the DC fast charger out here. That's a level 3 charger that was also provided by a grant through the Regional Air Quality Council. So with the help of the Federal Highway Administration, the RAC secured those funds, passed them down to the City of Longmont. So again, we're happy to be here. I'm available for any questions after this. We're very happy to have the vehicles in the fleet also because of the emissions reductions up here in your area. Cost of operation of these units is also very cheap, and they're easy to maintain. So thank you very much. Again, if you have any questions, I'll be here for questions. I'd like to introduce Tom Roanotis, General Manager, Longmont Power and Communications. Tom?
Thanks, Steve. And I want to thank Steve and the Regional Air Quality Council for the generous grant that they provided the city that helped fund these 2 new vehicles. And you know, we've had hybrid electric vehicles in our utility for several years now, including even some of the first electric hybrid line trucks. But these do represent the first all-electric vehicles in our fleet, and I'm absolutely certain they won't be the last. I mean, when you've got an organization that does the vast majority of its driving within about a 6-mile radius of its headquarters, range anxiety isn't something that's going to give you too much of an issue. And you know, as the technology gets better and better, and it will, and the prices get cheaper and cheaper, and with the inherent reliability of an electric motor, these things are just going to make more and more sense, and we're going to begin to employ more and more of them in our fleet. As an electric utility, though, the plug-in vehicles definitely represent both an opportunity and a challenge. And the mayor talked a little bit about the opportunity. You know, we expect to see these things plugged in, and the majority of the charging maybe in the evening hours, which is considered our off-peak hours. As we see lighting become more efficient, you know, with the use of LED lights, we're starting to see some of that lighting load drop, and we're going to have plenty of capacity from a generation and transmission perspective to be able to deliver the energy these things require without having to add additional capacity, and that's good for everybody because that keeps our already low costs, continue to keep those costs low for everybody. Challenge, though, will be on the local distribution side. And what I mean by that is your neighborhoods. If you can imagine a scenario where you come home and you're driving home with your nice new electric vehicle, and you pull into the garage and you plug it in, and you know your spouse is home because her car's already in the garage and it's plugged in, and you walk past your washer and dryer and they're turning away taking care of the family laundry, and you walk in the kitchen and you turn on your electric stove, get ready for dinner. It's about 6 o'clock at night. You know the kids are home because they're all playing video games, watching the big screen TV. You happen to look across the street and the neighbor pulls up in his brand new electric car that you talked him into because you loved yours so much. He plugs his in. It's a hot day. You hear the air conditioner go on, and all of a sudden you hear kind of a pow and all the lights go out. We have to make sure that doesn't happen, because you see probably you and the 4 or 5 houses around you probably serve from a little pad mount distribution transformer that might have been designed in the 80s, and although most of the time it's going to do its job, it probably wasn't designed in mind to have all that simultaneous demand. And that is an issue that we're aware of. Good news is there's a lot of smart people working on solving that problem, and with any technology you've got benefits as well as challenges, and we'll meet the challenges to reap the incredible benefits of the technology. And speaking of benefits, if you haven't driven one of these things, if you get a chance to test drive one. There's something about that quiet, linear torque of these electric motors that's very fun and fulfilling. But you got to be careful with not having too much fun, because just like a gasoline motor, you have too much fun, you know, your mileage drops. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I appreciate you being here to celebrate the event. And if you do get an opportunity, take one for a test drive. And next, I'd like to introduce Dale Rademacher. Dale is the General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources. Thanks, Dale.
So it's actually a good thing to talk about something other than the flood. And so, you know, electric vehicles for Public Works and Natural Resources, we probably have one of the largest fleets in the city. And as Tom said, the vast majority of the work that we do is within the city limits of Longmont. And I think electric vehicles really represent that sort of next push towards technology, which is part of the strategy and one of the strategic initiatives that we're trying to continue to implement in Public Works, and I think across the city, is to not be afraid of new technology, embrace the new technology when you have an opportunity, and put it to use. I think we have a responsibility to do that. We also have a responsibility, I believe, to demonstrate to the community that electric vehicles are here to stay, and they work great. And so I think being part of that is great. We have another one coming next year, so as Tom says, the fleet's going to continue to grow. It probably won't be without its challenges. You know, when you can't hear that engine running, it's hard to know where the heck you are and whether you're ready to go or not. I also think in Public Works and Natural Resources, a big part of what we do is to protect the environment and to try to do things that we believe are environmentally wise and environmentally effective. And I do believe that whether you're looking at carbon footprint, or you're looking at basic fossil fuel use and gasoline and all that kind of stuff, I do believe these are a better route to go. I do hope the industry will continue to push these and that they will bring the price down so that, frankly, we can all afford them without having to get a very generous grant. And I hope that that's the future that we can all enjoy, both in our private lives as well as here at the city. But again, I think being part of that change here at the city and as part of the overall Longmont community is a good thing. I think Longmont has always stood out as one of those communities that is looking to the future, is trying to set the pace, not necessarily just a follower, but trying to set the standard for others to try to achieve. So I think being part of that is cool, and it's a good day for Longmont. And again, it's great to talk about something other than flood. So again, thanks for you all coming. I'll turn it back to Scott.
Now, we had originally planned this as an unveiling, but veils proved rather hard to come by. And in any event, you don't talk about electric vehicles with sheets over them. You talk about them by having them in operation. And so we've mentioned before that rides would be offered after this, and they still are. Since one of these vehicles is going to LPC and one of these is going to Public Works, I think rather than unveiling, it'd be appropriate to have Mr. Rademacher and Mr. Ronias start us up and at least give the first drive this afternoon.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Exactly.
Make sure you're getting the right one.
Start your engines.
Turn the motor on.
Oh my. It does.
Don't worry, I got a backup camera.
That's my name on it. You know, it's fine.
We're talking this afternoon with Steve McKenna, and he's the money man behind this. And the first question that comes up is this question that's well known to many people who are interested in this automobile, and that is range anxiety. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. Through the Charge Ahead Colorado program, which is a partnership between the Regional Air Quality Council and the Colorado Energy Office, since 2013 we've put in over 100 charging stations around the state. Most of those have been in the metro area, but they are located geographically spaced so that you can get around a fairly wide area in your electric vehicle.
So my understanding is that these charging stations charge money, then how much would it cost for a charge?
A lot of the times these are free. Through our grant process, we request that our grantees keep these free for a number of years. In some local governments, though, that's not possible, and they're required through ordinance to charge. So what they try to do is line that up with the normal parking fee. So downtown Denver, there is a charging station where I park, and it's $9 for 4 hours to park there.
Okay.
But usually it's about $1.
Okay.
So
it's reasonable to recharge at these charging stations. Now, what about at home? I understand it takes up to 20 hours to recharge with the regular 120. Could you speak to that?
it depends on the battery size, absolutely. So the Leaf on a 120 could take up to 20 hours. If you're able to run, if you've got a dryer in your garage, I have a dryer in my garage, and you've got the appropriate power, you can cut that to anywhere from 6 to 8 hours.
I see.
What I would suggest, if anybody's thinking about buying an electric vehicle, is going out to the Department of Energy Alternative Fuels Data Center website. And there is a great map out there that shows all the charging stations, whether they're level 1 or level 3 like this fast charger over here. And we can address any of your range anxiety.
So level 1 and level 2, could you explain more about that?
Absolutely. So level 1 is just going to be your normal home power. Level 2 is going to be what a dryer runs off of, basically. And then over here, what you've got is a DC fast charge, which I believe is 440. So it takes a little bit more power, and it's going to take some construction running that line to the unit. So what that does is you can get anywhere from 20 hours on the level 1 charging, about 8 hours on the level 2 charging, and anywhere, it could be 30 minutes to an hour and a half on level 3, depending on what vehicle you're charging.
Okay, this is a great promotional event. Have you scheduled any other promotional events?
At this point, yeah, the Regional Air Quality Council is participating in many of the National Drive Electric Week events around the area. I believe there's one in Boulder, there's going to be one in Littleton, and I'm not sure of all the rest around the area, but there are quite a few.
Excellent. Well, making the public more aware of these vehicles is crucial to their development.
I think one of the takeaways is that we need to move to this technology to reduce air pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions throughout the area, especially as our area becomes, as ozone pollution becomes more prevalent.
There can be no argument about that whatsoever. We're talking with Scott Roche.
Roche, yes.
Roche, and he has a brand new job. Can you tell us about your new job?
Yes, as of a month ago, I am the PR and marketing specialist for Longmont Power and Communications. This is actually a very exciting purchase for us. Of course, in case somebody else hasn't said it, we've got 2 Nissan Leafs that we've just added to the fleet, one for Public Works and Natural Resources, one for Longmont Power and Communications. These are the first all-electric vehicles in the fleet that are actually roadworthy. We do have one other electric vehicle. It is an ATM. It's mostly used by parks and open space folks, unless you want to count the golf carts, of course. It's very interesting. It's very exciting because, well, obviously this is also National Drive Electric Week, and so the city's acquiring these at this particular time was just a wonderful stroke of timing from a public relations perspective.
Now, I understand, Scott, that only Longmont and Boulder are actually, taking the lead on this Drive Electric Week. Is that true, or is it happening somewhere else across the state?
Actually, there are, from what I understand, and I would want to go back and check my information first, I think there are probably about half a dozen communities across Colorado that are doing National Drive Electric Week. If you look up online, NDEW actually has a listing of events and communities that are celebrating it. Now, I don't know what other events the other cities are doing, but that is what I've heard so far.
Okay. Scott, have you taken a test drive yourself?
I have been in one. I have not actually driven one yet, but all the LPC employees are getting trained up on the vehicle so that we can use it as a normal part of the fleet. All right.
Okay, Scott, thanks so much for your time.
I
Appreciate
hope I was
it.
at least coherent.
Yeah, very good. Thanks. As an owner, what can you say to us about how you feel about owning this vehicle?
Owning and buying an electric car is one of the best decisions that we've ever made, because I used to drive a gas guzzler. It's a sedan and it's a V6, and just looking at how much I'm spending on gas just driving around town, it's just painful.
Yes.
And it took us a while to decide to buy an electric car because they're kind of still on the expensive side.
Yes.
And what we did is we looked for a used one, and we found one for $18,000.
Oh, that's useful information.
Yes.
I've been trying to find out about that. Now,
Yeah.
what was the mileage on the used one?
It has 10,000 miles in it
Okay.
for 18 grand, which is a
Okay.
good buy. I was like, you know what? Yes, we're gonna trade in my gas car and buy this electric car, because instead of looking at the short-term savings or costs or benefits of driving an ICE car or electric car, we realized that, hey, driving an electric car long term, it's going to save us more money and it's good for the environment.
So, do you have any kind of backup vehicle, or are you solely into the electric cars now?
We have a Chevy Volt, which is an extended range car. So we use that for long range or long distance driving.
Okay.
And then we use my car for just driving around town. And I'll tell you, I was able to drive my Ford Focus Electric from Longmont to Fort Collins without a problem. Yes.
Okay.
I still have 30 miles left in my car. I took I-25, I took 287, without a problem. I mean,
I-25.
mm-hmm.
Now, that brings up an interesting question. What is the top cruising speed?
I drove 75 miles per hour, and while I was driving, I was like worried that will I be able to make it to Fort Collins? I was able to make it to Fort Collins with still 50 miles left, and I was like, from Fort Collins to Longmont, I'm gonna take 287, and I was able to make it, and I still have 30 miles left in my car.
So obviously, the faster you go, the more juice you use. Then.
Yes.
Is that right?
So it's not really advisable to take an electric car on the freeway.
Okay. Do you have an electric bike by any chance?
Right now we don't. I wanted one.
Yeah.
Because it's I would like to use my electric car for probably picking up groceries or going further than 10 miles, but I wanted to ride an electric bicycle just probably from my house to downtown Longmont,
So you say that you use the Volt for greater ranges then. Could you tell us more about that?
Our Chevy Volt, well, they said that the battery, you can go for like 35 miles, but the car detects how good of a driver you are. So right now we're actually getting 45 to 50 miles on a charge. The car uses the gas to run the generator, so it charges the car while you're driving.
Okay.
So let's say while it's running the generator, then you get six miles on your battery, then it's going to start running on battery again. So that's what it does.
So the Volt is a hybrid then, is that what you're saying?
They don't want to consider it as a hybrid. It's called an extended range. The car uses the gas for the generator, so it charges the battery of the car. Instead of like a hybrid, once the battery is out, then it's going to run on gas. The Chevy Volt is, yes, it's running on gas to charge the battery, and then once you have enough charge in your car, it's going to run using the battery again. So it's like a cycle.
I see.
So,
Well, Roma, your enthusiasm for the ownership of the vehicle is contagious, and we're glad to have your sparkling endorsement. Thank you so much for your time.
you're welcome. Thank you.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day in Colorado.
Now, you are an owner.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about about the most important thing that it is about owning this car to you?
The most important thing is they're fast.
They're fast.
They are fast. You wouldn't think of an electric car being fast normally, but because of the way electric motors work versus gas engines, you don't have to wait for the car to get to an ideal RPM. The full torque is available at 0. So we actually chirp the tires on these cars all the time. They're a lot of fun to drive. A lot of people think they're boring, but because of all that torque, being a guy who loves to go fast, it's a lot of fun. But that's what I think the most important thing is about them. They're not as boring as some people think they are. You know, they're great too because you can go fast and still not burn any gasoline.
Wow, this is something that, not very many people are probably aware of. The usual conception of electric cars is, top speed 35, it's not much faster than a golf cart.
My Volt that I have, because we also have a Volt, and the Volt can go 105 as its top speed. And there are some people actually...
Excuse me, is that 105 miles per hour or kilometers?
That is 105 miles per hour, and that's full electric too. One beautiful thing about the handling on electric cars is because of the lower center of gravity due to the batteries, they're lower in the car. So cornering is awesome. It's phenomenal. In fact, I think it's on par to a Subaru Impreza when it comes to cornering. Another thing about it is the balance of the cars are usually quite good. So braking, accelerating is very, very nice. The cars themselves, as far as handling, they're on par to any other car you would drive. You would be able to get into the car and just drive it like you would a normal car. There's nothing new you'd have to learn. There's nothing special. You just get in and go and just not use any gasoline.
Well, that is an obvious advantage. What are some of the other things that we might not have thought about, that you have observed in your ownership?
Okay, well, there's two big ones. Normally when you're driving a regular car, you brake and you stop at a stoplight, your gas engine's running. When you're an electric car, when you let off the gas, or the accelerator, the car actually starts generating its power back. So when you're slowing down, you're not wasting any gas engine running. Wow. It's generating its power back into the batteries. When you're at a stop, there's nothing running. You're not using any gasoline. The car is just sitting there. So it generates its power back into the car, which also means you don't have to replace your brakes as often because you're not braking as much either. So there's a lot of benefits for that part of the car. In addition, what normally people spend on gas a month, I don't know how much you spend on your car a month, but I was spending about $250 to $300 a month in gas.
Easily.
Okay. For that same amount of money, you can get a brand new electric car without having any additional cost. Just the cost that you spend in gasoline could go into a new car.
Your car payment, then, in other words.
Exactly.
Now, I understand that you bought one of your vehicles used. Is that right?
That is correct. This Ford Focus, as you see behind us, we bought that used from Kansas. They shipped it to us. We had custom leather installed, and in total, it was $18,500. Had 10,000 miles. It was a 2012. In my book, that's practically brand new.
Yes.
So you can buy a car for a decent price or lease it for the same amount of money you would spend a month. And in most options, leasing is the way to go because the technology is changing so often. But if you plan on staying in the city the entire time, buying one used is also a good option too.
What about the warranties that might or might not be offered with an electric car?
Okay. As far as warranties are concerned, they're all 100,000 miles, 8 years on the electric battery, electric drive system, which is a beautiful thing because that's the same as what some transmissions. In fact, some transmissions are only 60,000 miles on a gas-powered car. So your battery is guaranteed for 100,000 miles or 8 years. Now, a lot of people are worried that the batteries will just drop dead at the end of it. That's not the case. It's just like a lead light bulb. If you ever owned a lead light bulb, it doesn't drop dead after the 10-year warranty on your light bulb. It just gets a little bit dimmer. And then that's the same thing case with the batteries. They might not have as much charge. And I say might because I have a friend who's got over 250,000 miles and he's experienced no hit on the battery at all. So the batteries will still keep running. By the time you even need to replace the batteries, the technology will be vastly different, be vastly cheaper, and you'll also have a lot more new advances to the newer battery systems and stuff.
So the way to go then is lease then?
Depends on your budget. You have to check your financial budget. My grandfather, he likes to buy his cars because he likes to sell them. He'll keep them for 10 years. If you're the kind of person who likes to keep your car for a long time, by all means, buy a used one. If you want a brand new one, though, go lease, because the incentives you get from the federal government and from Colorado will give you almost $11,000 off of the price of the vehicle just for leasing it.
And who knows what's coming up in the way of technological changes. You might want in a few years something with such a greater package, or technology is moving so fast that might be a viable option for people who are interested in keeping up with the technology.
Absolutely. In fact, Nissan will have a newer model in 2 years of the Leaf. They're going to give it a more of a subdued look. It doesn't look so different than a regular car. The battery technology next year should almost double. So again, most people only drive about 30 miles to and from work in total on an average daily basis. With the Leaf, you get advertised 76, but I know people get 110 on it. It just depends on your driving habits. They can't advertise a maximum, they advertise the minimum range. So always keep that in mind. The number you get is a minimum range, even during the wintertime and summertime. But for instance, our Ford electric, it's advertised as 76 miles. But we get 110 on it. So you don't get that with the miles per gallon on a gas car. You get their best possible miles per gallon, but nobody usually sees that.
Now, speaking of style, I noticed that the car looks very similar to a regular gas engine car. Will that trend continue, or people spend a lot of their attention on how they look in a car? How do you feel about that?
Yes, actually, that is a very good question. In fact, that's why Nissan is actually considering going back to a more standardized style for a car instead of something too out there. Because some people like the idea, but they don't like the appearance of the car. And I myself, the reason why we went for the Focus, because I like the Focus's styling better. It's very European-style grille on it. And we like the styling better. The technology, batteries, and motors are pretty much the same. There's only so many ways you can spool an electric motor and so many ways you can build a battery. But speaking of battery technology, it's getting better. Japan's working on some amazing batteries. So is Europe. So a lot of stuff coming out.
See, it's becoming more and more affordable to greater and greater amounts of people, which I think is really important to really get this car launched into our society and culture.
Absolutely, I agree. Do your homework, do the internet, check out our company website. We help people like you buy an electric car, and we don't charge anything for it. So we just like getting people into them.
So we might be able to shop online then, say, if we can't find what we need locally, we might be able to shop online and actually get a pretty good deal on delivery.
Absolutely, and if at the very least you can actually help a dealer that's local be more competitive with an online price from another dealership out of state. So absolutely, you can always get a good one.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. We'll see you again on Saturday.
Thank you.
We're speaking now with Nigel Zeed. He has got a name badge that says Boulder Nissan. He's actually, had a great deal to do with the purchase of this for Longmont, and he hails from London in the United Kingdom. Can you tell us more about the Nissan Leafs that Longmont recently purchased?
So they purchased two of them. I guess it's a sort of trial for them, and I'm hoping it'll work out very well for them. For what they're going to be using it for, it'd be very I'd be astounded if it doesn't work, because it's all lots of little small journeys. But it saves an awful lot of gasoline for sure. And also from a maintenance perspective, they're going to be having a once-a-year service, and that's going to be it really. Rotate your tires, change your brake fluid, in-cabin air filter, wiper blades, wash it, send you on your way, see you in a year.
I understand that they enjoyed some sort of a rebate off of the starting price. Is that true?
Correct. The Regional Air Quality Council had a rebate. I'm not sure exactly how much that is, but there was a funding from them to bring the price down.
So there may also be tax incentives involved in the future for Longmont or personal owners?
Personal owners, yes. Cities, it's much more difficult for them to claim federal and state tax credits, but from a general public's perspective, there's an awful lot of rebates right now. They won't run forever. The state one runs till 2021. I think the federal one is about 2016 or 17 so far. But they have large rebates. There's $7,500 in federal tax credits, up to $6,000 in state tax credits. And with Nissan, there's another $3,500 off from Nissan and $1,500 from our store. So if you can take advantage of everything, you're going to be able to take advantage of about $18,000 in rebates and discounts.
Excellent, excellent. So can you think of any, on purchasing the vehicle, since you were involved with that, what can you tell our viewers about actually purchasing one of these? Are you limited just strictly to local dealers, or can you purchase them online, or how does that work?
You can't really purchase, well, you can purchase them online, I guess that's internet, but yeah, you can go to any store, and every store in the States, there's 1,200 Nissan stores that all sell Leafs now everywhere. Certain states have better tax credits than others and rebates than others, but yeah, it's completely accessible car. It's been out for 4 years now, so we've sort of ironed out pretty much every bug that there is. I'm sure there'll be more in the future, as there is with every car. And then the next generation should be out in about 2 years' time, 2016, 17. And then we'll see hopefully a longer range, perhaps some different styling to it. We'll have to see what happens. But it's a very exciting time. It's exponential in how from 2011 when the first cars came out to 12 to 13, and seeing how many more customers are buying, and also how many more are coming back and getting their second one when their leases are running out. And a lot of people have been leasing because it gives them the option at the end of their lease, if there's new technology, to just step out of this car into the latest technology without the possibility of being upside down in your car, as it were. Leafs come with a roadside assistance, which is free for 3 years. So if you had a flat tire, dead battery, something wrong with the car, all you would do, bless you, all you would do is call the 1-800 number, and then they'll send someone out to pick you up and either take you to a dealership, take you home, or take you to a charging station.
That certainly addresses the question of a range anxiety, which is on everybody's lips. Yes, yeah. So could you speak to that a little bit for us from your perspective?
You don't see it so much. I think when people first get the car and they can run it down near empty, you can have a bit of range anxiety. But you get to know where you're going, and you get to know where the charging stations are. And for instance, I just leased a car to a gentleman who lives in Granby, and he's retired. So he said, well, it doesn't matter how long it takes me to get home because I'm not in a rush. He left my store. He stopped off at a Bojo's Pizza in Idaho Springs, who have a 240 level 2 charger. He stayed there for about an hour. He had 67 miles showing on his charge, and he made it to Granby with 13 miles left, which I thought was very admirable for a first time out in a car. It's a close call. But if he'd have stayed a bit longer, he'd have had even more in the battery. And again, the other thing, the biggest thing here is infrastructure. Is building the infrastructure with these level 3 chargers are fantastic. That's a game changer for people with Leafs or any electric car. And the level 2s, just getting them out there and so that you don't have to worry about where to get a charge.
So I imagine on the odometer, you could set the mileage that you believe you have and then kind of watch it on a moment-to-moment basis.
Yes, and on the SV and SL models, they have navigation, but they also have a system whereby it will show you a circle around where you are, how far you could drive in any direction one way, and as you're driving, it's following you, and obviously it's getting smaller as your range is getting smaller, but then you can see the charging stations that are within your radius.
So a GPS might be a handy accessory to have for you particularly if you're traveling over long distances.
Right. Exactly, and it's not designed to be a long distance car. You could do it, but you better have plenty of time to do it.
Right. Is there anything else that you can think of that you particularly would like to say in closing?
I think the car does not work for everybody right now, but the range is going to get longer and it will work for an awful lot more people. 90% of us do less than 70 miles a day. 70% of us do less than 29 miles a day. I think if people were to drive the car, you'll see how suitable it is for a lot of people. You never buy gas again. You have a once a year service. You can't really break the car. I mean, there's nothing really to break on it.
I'm told by an owner that they go 75 to 100 miles an hour.
They're capped at 97 miles an hour, apparently. I've never taken it up to that speed, but I'm told it is 75 miles an hour. 95, I beg your pardon. And it has an 85 to 100 mile range, very comfortably 85 miles. The previous generations of GM vehicles, they crushed them because they weren't really into electric cars and they weren't taking it seriously the first time round. Now they brought out the Volt, and now other people are starting to take it seriously. A lot of the companies were originally doing a lot of compliance cars. You make the minimal amount that you have to make to keep the government quiet. But now I think people are seeing, particularly with the Leaf, and purely because the Leaf has been out for so long, that you can have a fully electric car and that people are loving it that have it. And I think now a lot of other companies are starting to jump on that. So you'll start to see everyone starting to get more into electric, or at least offer an electric vehicle, and not just be in 2 or 3 states. So many of them are, well, it's California, it's in Oregon, it's in Washington, but there's nothing here, or they're on, short leases. But we're getting better.
Okay. So availability is increasing as the market demands more and more, as the market demand increases. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nigel. Thank you for your time.